I am approaching my 13th year at the University of San Francisco as a faculty member in the teacher education department, where I currently serve as chair. Thank you so much for joining us, the Center for Humanizing Education and Research, today for Conversation 1 of our summer series. We are in a significant moment in history, witnessing masses of people throughout the world express their righteous indignation against the dehumanization of Black life and uniting across difference against the multiple forms of state-sanctioned violence facing our communities. We have so much to learn from these sites of struggle, and See Her sees itself as a site for us to explore possible solutions to the various problems confronting us as a people, serving on the right side of history. Thank you to Lena Onishi for serving behind the scenes during the planning process, and today as the stage manager, virtually during this webinar. An additional thank you to Lisa Clote for handling outreach for the summer series, as well as Beyond for USF altogether. At this point, I would like to welcome our fearless leader, the See Her founder, and the Dean of the School of Education, Shabnam Koirala Azad.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick Kamangian, who serves as the chairperson of our teacher education department. I am filled with so much joy and excitement this morning. And I want to start by thanking our amazing panelists here. I'm so humbled to have an opportunity to learn from each of you this morning. And I want to thank you especially for helping us launch our research center, the Center for Humanizing Education and Research, See Her. I also want to extend a really warm welcome to all the participants here, our current students in the School of Education, our incoming students, our alumni, our faculty, our staff, and so many collaborators locally, regionally, globally, who are joining us today to participate in this very important conversation. So warm, warm welcome to all of you. And hopefully this is the beginning of ongoing collaboration in this important work. The Center for Humanizing Education and Research, which we call See Her, is a space where we really hope to participate in the evolution of thought in the field of education. And we know how important this evolution of thought is at this current moment. We draw inspiration from a number of initiatives that are already underway in the Bay Area, many other research centers and thought communities. And we very much see our work in solidarity with all these other efforts, and part of a movement that is leading towards the evolution of thought and subsequently the evolution of practice, policy, and of course, our own being in this world, our internal and personal transformation as well. We say that the center, the work of the center is the generation of new knowledge, the application of new knowledge, and the diffusion of new knowledge, especially in solidarity with local and global communities. And we are so excited to jumpstart this work today with all of you. Very much looking forward to the work ahead. This is the first of a summer series with 2 other events following up, and we invite you to participate in all of that and the work of the center in years to come. And all this, we are trying to accomplish all this in order to advance the mission of the School of Education, which is to advance justice through education. So thank you so much for joining us in this work and in this larger project. We certainly cannot do it without all of you. So thank you. Again, a warm welcome to everyone, and very much looking forward to the work ahead.
Awesome, thank you, Dean. I'm getting a bunch of messages from people who say they're getting bumped off. So I don't know what we can do about that. Savannah being one of them. There's Savannah, I see you, Savannah. Okay, good, great to see you. Cool. We want to get a sense of where people are zooming in from. So please use the chat to shout out your city, shout out your community, shout out any of the organizations or spaces that you are a part of. Okay, LA represent, Cincinnati, San Francisco, Sunnyvale, Oakland in the house, Santa Rosa Community College, LMU, Tijuana. Woo, look at this, Berkeley. All right, good. Chicago, good looking people. We seem like we got a good range of folks. What's that?
I said I saw the SIP, Mississippi representing.
Mississippi, the SIP, never heard that. That's love. Massachusetts, Richmond. All right, y'all. So yes, definitely. Please share comments, questions, connections in the chat as we go along. Keep things critical, loving, and respectful. This is our first time doing this. If we have any technical difficulties, please be forgiving. At this point, I want to introduce our panelists. First, we have Dr. Savannah Shange, an assistant professor in anthropology at UC Santa Cruz, a Black queer feminist scholar. Dr. Shange's recent book, Progressive Dystopia, argues for abolition over revolution and progressive reform as the needed path toward Black freedom. Dr. Kihana Miraya Ross is an assistant professor of African American Studies at Northwestern University. Her work explores how Black educators and students collectively resist anti-Blackness, and through this can spawn possibilities for rebirth and radical imagination. And of course, we have the wonderful Dr. Micia Mosely, the founding executive director of the Black Teacher Project, a powerful organization committed to recruiting, developing, and sustaining Black teachers for US schools. I have so much love and respect for Savannah, Kihana, and Micia, and have learned so much from you all, from them over the years. When preparing for today's session, I encourage them to be themselves, speak their truths, have fun, and tell folks how they really feel about the needs of the communities they care about the most. And for some, this will be very exciting. For others, this may make us uncomfortable. But I think humanization comes when we learn to be comfortable in our critical discomfort. With that in mind, please join me in welcoming these wonderful Black educators to the panel. Yay. All right. So to start us off, I would like to welcome Sarah and Makai. You there?
I'm here.
All right. I see Makai. Sarah.
Yes.
Let's get that.
Well,
I think we're having. Sarah.
all right, cool. All right. So I just want to start off thanking you guys for being here. read all of your writing. I am truly deeply inspired. And I just want to touch a little bit on the fact that, Kihana, you touched it on anti-Blackness and how it is separate from racism, and how that there should be that distinction because of the effects, the deep effects of anti-Blackness, and how that exudes into the school system, and how Black students are treated on the premises of anti-Blackness, and how it is different, and how people measure their humanness at the disadvantage of Black bodies. And Savannah, you touch on this a little bit in Progressive Dystopia, where you touch on anti-Blackness and abolition, and how we should look at funding and reinvesting into Black students and their livelihoods, whether it be mental health or career-wise. And Micia Mosely, the Black Teacher Project, I am deeply inspired. I've heard of you in different organizations. I'm part of a student activist organization called Students Deserve, and they're deeply rooted in your work. And we love the fact that you continuously center Black liberation and make it a point to invest that framework into Black teachers mostly, but also other teachers as well, in order to benefit Black students as well. So I just want to thank y'all, and all praises be unto you.
Sarah, could you tell us your full name and the space, school you go to, space you represent, maybe?
Yes, I'm Sarah. I go to high school in South Central LA, and I'm also a student leader in Students Deserve.
Thank you. Nakai.
Good morning. As a young black man, I really relate.
What school you go to? Where
you sorry
about
from? That. Once again, I'm Makai. I'm from Compton, California, but I go to school at Warren High School in Downey. So yeah, as a young black man, I really relate to what you all have wrote in your articles. But what I wanted to ask you was, can segregation be a solution to eliminate anti-Blackness and ensure Black liberation pedagogy taught by Black teachers? So that's my question for you all.
Okay, I was thrown for a loop, but let's work with that. Y'all want to start with that, or you could definitely respond, and maybe along the way tell us where you're from and how you came to your work, and then how that informs your answer to Makai's question.
All right, thank you, Makai. And I guess I'll use this to kind of go into my introduction, but I think first, and I think Malcolm X said this, there's a difference between segregation and separation, right? And so I think people think about segregation as this thing that's imposed on Black folks that prevents Black folks from doing XYZ based on the way that they're racialized. Separation is something different altogether. And Black people have historically, since enslavement and really through the current times, created Black spaces for the exact purposes that you're talking about. So I think that it's not about segregation, right? And something being forced upon us, but that this idea of separation is a critical part of moving in that direction. So I prepared my intro. I don't want to I'd like other folks, if y'all want to jump in before we move into intros, I don't want to prevent. Okay. And I'm actually glad I did, because it's like those nights when your baby decides this is the night I'm gonna have nightmares about monkey bars and be kicking you in the back all night and not let you sleep. Anyway, so, and I'm not super fancy, so I just wrote down some things that I have to say, but
we'll get it right after this. I'll ask you that question.
Okay. And I said I wasn't going to take it back to middle school, but I actually am going to take it back to middle school, but just for a second. So I was in the 7th grade, when the Richmond School District went bankrupt. I didn't understand what that meant at the time, but what it translated to was science becoming an elective and my 8th grade math teacher actually being a PE teacher who knew nothing about math. At the time, I was part of an education program in Richmond called Making Waves. Through that program, I got into another program called A Better Chance. Through that program, I got admitted to an elite white wealthy high school in Oakland, the College Preparatory School. And at that school, I learned that everybody's schools weren't like the ones I came from. I learned that people had elevators in their Piedmont houses, and some people got brand new Mercedes-Benz for their 16th birthdays. I do want to pause though and shout out my mom for my tercel because it got me everywhere, A to Z. So anyway, but I learned that apparently Northern white factory workers had worse living conditions than enslaved Africans. My ancestors who were systematically raped, brutalized, and tortured for centuries, literally made into things. The wombs of Black women stolen to birth property into this new world. I read a poem at an assembly once. I had taken to drowning my sorrow and rage in pools of ink on paper. I read a poem about my father's alcoholism and drug addiction. I poured my tears on the floor before them, stood in their silence when I was done, only to have a white teacher approach me and ask me if my mother was afraid of catching AIDS. So I took a year off after high school. Not in the I'm gonna travel Europe kind of way, but in the I need a mental, spiritual, physical, everything kind of break from school, so I'm gonna work at Chevy's kind of way. I still don't understand how I got into Cal. I left the SAT early, almost dropped out of high school, and my grades were subpar. Maybe it was the prestige of my high school, or maybe they read my statement and felt sorry for me. Or maybe somehow somebody saw past what was on paper and wanted to take a chance on me. Either way, I was grateful to be there. I still remember taking my first Black Studies class. Shout out to Professor Eula Taylor, who by the way is still at Cal and doesn't look a day older than she did when I was in the front row of her class, eager to hear every last word she let pass through her lips. And I felt like this whole new world was opening. I felt like I was being told this amazing secret that, that explained somehow everything I saw and felt growing up, but didn't have the words or context for. And I was mad as hell that I hadn't learned any of this before. And then I took Pedro Noguera's class on education, and I had one of those Matrix movie moments where all of the past images coalesced in your mind simultaneously to form this beautiful, shining aha moment. It was the schools. The differences between my old schools filled with people who looked like me and PE teachers as math teachers, and my new school filled with wealthy white kids lounging in the sun during free periods and driving their Mercedes to College Ave for fancy lunches. And the fact that neither of those schools taught me anything useful about myself. While I was still an undergrad, I became a youth worker at the same program I had came up through. I was desperate to ensure these students had the same information I was getting in college. Tupac once said, somebody gotta explain to me why I ain't got shit. Yeah. And I aimed to share information I thought would help students understand why the world looked and felt the way it did, and why our people were always already struggling to survive. I hadn't done like all the critical pedagogy stuff yet, so I probably just like bang folks over the head with information in a way that might not have been helpful. I don't know, but I thought I was doing something. Anyway, fast forward years, and after a brief stint in Brooklyn, shout out to Malcolm X grassroots movement and my Cop Watch folks, which is funny because I moved away from Brooklyn because it was cold, and now I live in one of the coldest places in the world where it's like winter for 9 months. But again, an aside, I moved back to the Best Side and was back at Cal as a PhD student in education. I didn't have the fancy statements folks have about what they want to study. I just knew I wanted to make education better for Black folks. And although I have some fancier words to pull on these days, at the heart of it is still that same gut-wrenching love I have for my people, the same life-breath desire to see us tear down what Deb Prez calls they schools and build our own places and spaces of real deal, meaningful, teach me something about my damn self kind of education. Did she say tear it down? No. Yes. So let me share something else I figured out in all this little life I've lived and what some of these fancy words mean to me. For me, the utility and work I've done on Black cred and in considering anti-Blackness in education more broadly is about recognizing the ways anti-Blackness functions in schools and that this condition is irreconcilable. Further, in recognizing how these schools are irredeemable for Black children, that they schools will never be ours, we are better positioned to conceptualize liberatory educational experiences for Black children. To be clear, this recognition does not mean we simply give up on schools and do nothing. Quite the contrary, as Black children will likely remain in these institutions for decades to come. This just necessitates us giving attention to what I call the meantime and between time, or what it is we can do right now to mitigate the Black suffering in schools and make the educational experiences of Black students better. For example, in my own forthcoming work, I theorize Black educational fugitive space and explore the ways, and this kind of gets at some of what Makai was asking earlier, but explores the ways Black students and educators enact educational fugitivity through the social production of Black space in the margin. I consider the ways Black educational fugitive space manifests both as departure and refuge from the gratuitous violence of what I call the afterlife of school segregation, and spawns the possibilities for rebirth and resistance. In my own work with Black girls specifically, I consider the numerous ways their production of Black girl space facilitates a reimagining of a Black girl identity and radical Black girl subjectivity. Hence, Black Crit allows us to simultaneously develop liberatory fantasies and imagine a broader fugitive vision, while also putting our collective energy into supporting the parents, teachers, community activists, administrators, and most importantly, the students themselves who work tirelessly every day to create what Christina Sharp calls livable moments in schools. In my current work here in Evanston, a suburb just outside Chicago, I just happen to be a Black woman living in the first city in the US to approve money for reparations for Black folks here. Like in Cali, weed got legalized and all the tax money from cannabis sales goes to a reparations fund. Now we can talk about, what it means for Black folks to still be locked up and the money to be coming from there, but that's another conversation. But I'm primarily concerned with what this means for educational reparations and how anti-Blackness in education work might inform this idea of educational reparations to more deeply grapple with both the injury and also moving in the direction of redress. And I'll just end by saying that this is not just about the contradistinction between what was not given to Black folks upon emancipation, right? Money, land, opportunity, and the general wealth created for whites through systematic rape, torture, and thingification of Black bodies. It is about theft, the theft of Black bodies, the theft of anything Black folks dared to build and or own as newly freed people, and critically, the theft from generations of Black families whose educational opportunities were systematically stolen from them, right? Like there are still people alive who couldn't go to high school because there was not one available for them as Black folks. So I'll leave it there, but I'm really just thinking about what the idea of educational reparations means and what it means to connect these ideas of theft and historicization of what we demand, even if what we demand will never make up for what was lost, for what was stolen, and what was denied.
Thank you, Kihana. I want to just apologize to the panelists. Thank you so much. And apologize to the students. I tried to get cute and have them ask a question for you to introduce yourselves, but I messed up because I called the wrong students first. But thanks for stepping up, Dr. Ross. But so it makes more sense. I want to see if I can get, Lena, if we can get Fayola and Matthew on real quick to ask the question so that when Micia and Savannah answer, it makes sense as to, introduction wise. But I apologize, I messed that up. We got Fayola and Matthew real quick to
Okay, hi, good morning to the panelists. I just want to say you guys are very inspirational, beautiful Black women, and it's just amazing hearing your guys's, and after reading some of your works, Kihana, I don't know, should I say your first name or your last name? I don't know. Okay, so your Call It What It Is anti-Blackness article was literally outstanding to me. Like I learned new concepts that I have never learned in school. And that just, like what you were saying about educational reparations, I feel like that really opened my eyes, and I learned new concepts that allowed me to actually define my Black experience in life. Um, Savannah, your work and importance on intersectionality and your progressive dystopia and the importance of realizing how gentrification kind of like shifts the demographic for Black students in schools. It was just so like important and like beautiful to read, because it's like this happens all over the country, and it's so important to realize that this isn't fake. This is real. It's affecting people right now, real time, around us. It's not a distant problem. It's here already right now. And Micia, your the Black Teacher Project is just really, it just shows me that there's people out there who care about the Black youth, and that they're out there learning more to help the Black students and Black youth to actually reimagine schooling system so it actually helps and benefits Black students. As Sarah said earlier, it just really, all around, all three of you guys are so inspirational, and I loved reading your work. It the intersectionality importance around it was really important to me, because as a queer Black student, I don't get that support at school. So reading your works just really invited me and included me into it, and I loved it. It was amazing. So I'll pass it off to Fayola.
Hi, I'm Fayola Bassi, and can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Fayola Bassi, and I go to Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies high school. And during this time, like during VIPS, we've read like all of you guys' works, and I just like really commend you guys for you guys. I've just learned so much, like especially vocabulary wise, and I've learned like how to express what I've been feeling within schools and how my friends are feeling as far as just like oppression and just like different things that we experience in our day-to-day lives. And so during this time, we've been kind of soul searching. And as Black youth, we've been doing some critical introspection to work on ourselves as we aspire to reach a place in life where you guys are right now. So I just really wanted to ask you to tell me about yourself and how you came to your work and how this is relevant to us as Black students in your webinar.
So Micia or Savannah, either one of you.
Okay. First, thank you so much to Makai and Sarah and Fayola, and I'm sorry, Matthew. Yes, for inviting this space. Okay, now I feel like I'm feeling very nourished, but it also means that like I have all the stuff that I was supposed to say, but now I want to say other things. So Fayola, Matthew, Makai, and Sarah, it's up to y'all. Y'all want me to go off the dome? Should I share what I had prepared, or y'all want me to go off the dome, or try to mix it on the spot? What you want?
You can mix it on the spot if you want.
Okay. It's gonna be a little chopped and screwed, but just help me with the transitions. Okay, so I'm gonna start with Fayola's question about kind of how we came to this work, and like Kihana, taking it back to middle school. I guess for me, for high school, I'm from Philly mostly. I grew up moving around a lot growing up, and a lot within Philly. I switched high schools every year of high school, and I went to 3 different high schools. I'm also solo parenting right now, so give me one. Child, she was fine. And so for me in high school, the last high school I graduated from, one of the most kind of significant experiences for me was graduating, of course, right? And so I'm sure y'all are ready to graduate. I mean, who knows what it's gonna look like now? You're gonna be walking across the stage. I may or may not have like thrown my mortarboard directly at the racist school principal and not up in the air, and I may or may not have hit her, but I digress. And so at that moment though, where I was so filled with kind of release and relief and pride, the people who had made sure I could get there, the people who I rolled with every day, the smartest people I knew, were not on stage with me. They were sitting in the audience watching me because they didn't go to school, because they didn't graduate on time, right? Some of them ended up getting it together and doing a GED later, and some of them didn't, right? And so for you all, I mean, everybody from LA is in the building, I know in the Zoom, for you all here, I think that sensation of knowing that you are doing these things and being a school kid and doing your thing, and yet seeing the ways in which the opportunities that you are lucky enough, working hard enough, privileged enough, all those things to get are not actually being distributed across your whole community, right? At that moment of separation, which is both kind of heartbreaking because you're like, I know this dude is smarter than me, right? I know that she's not going to school because she refuses to lower herself to that standard, not because she can't do it, right? And so I think for me, that moment of being on stage and knowing that I wasn't really on stage by myself, but it looked like I was, right? They were calling my name, but it should have been calling 4, 5, 6, 7. That's when the lie of meritocracy became very embodied for me. And I knew never to trust anything that any institution ever tells me about me or my people, right? And so I went on, I got all the degree. Listen, they have a degree, I got it, okay? But I think it's important that we don't allow ourselves to be confused by external forms of motivation and approval, right? With our own grounding and who brought us here, that was sitting in the audience, who brought us here, that's pumping in our veins, right? Who brought us here that we chose as family when our own family shut the door on us, right? And so I think for me, the people that brought me to the building are often not allowed in the building, right? And so all of that to say that, I guess there's two things I want to say about that. And one is that you asked us to think about what brings us to the work, right? And I think a lot of times, particularly in academia, we can confuse our job with the work, right? Or our job with our work. And I'm going to tell you, in general, unless you are Jackie Byers, who founded the Black Organizing Project, who after 10 years got the OUSD to cancel its contract with the OPD, your job is probably not your work, right? We have to do jobs because capitalism is the structure that governs our world for now. And so while we're doing jobs to pay our rent and et cetera, we also need to be doing our work, right? And part of what meritocracy tells us, part of what the celebrity culture tells us, part of what kind of, the diversity, inclusion, anti-racism complex tells us is that their work is our work, and it's a lie. So Matthew, Fayola, Makai, Sarah, you know what you came to do, right? And so I just want to just affirm you and all of the other folks who are in the chat that you can do a both and. It's a two-step, right? But don't start hopping and just doing the dance for them, right? Always keep that two-step in and making sure that the work you're doing is bringing in those 6, 7 people who are sitting in the audience, that when you're working in a school, you're just as focused on who didn't come to class today, just as focused on who's in the hallway and not in your class, and not passing a judgment on well, you didn't respect me by not coming to my class. What were you not doing in your class to not make it compelling enough to be there, baby? Okay. Somebody's 17 years old and they got out of bed to be in this stinky, underheated, overheated school at 8:30 in the morning, but you want to say that they don't want to be there. Oh, okay. They know where their bed is. They know where the corner is. They got some very nice things they keep doing in their room right now, but they're not. Okay. Alas. Okay, let me get back to the page. I'm supposed to be saying, Matthew got me off. Okay. Okay. All that to say, went to college, became a high school teacher in part because I love working with young people, and also in part because I wanted health insurance. I didn't have it as a kid. And even though I got trained as an actor, guess who doesn't have health insurance? Actors, right? I love going to the doctor. I go to the doctor all the time. Health insurance is the bomb. Only here in the United States do you make your entire life course based on the ability to continue having a body, but I digress. So I taught high school, and I taught at a fantastic high school, right? There's actually probably, and I think now that I've studied it, the most fundamentally anti-racist space I've ever been a part of, right? And I worked there, I helped build programs there, I was hella about it, worked with hella young people, Frisco in the building. I learned so much of what I know about being an educator, about being a person, about being a mother from the young people of San Francisco. So Frisco's in the building, thank you so much. To Excelsior, the Mo, BDHP, all of y'all, thank you so much for all that you've given me and allowed me to be in your city and supporting you. But at that same school that was doing all of this incredible anti-racist work, I'm talking about Che Guevara on the wall, I'm talking about Audre Lorde required reading, like we're in this. There was still a situation where Black children were getting suspended more, pushed out of class more. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let me go to grad school, get this PhD real quick, and see if I can do some research to try to fix this issue, because we're doing so good, right? The school is really the best school I've ever seen. And yet we just need to get a little bit better with Black students, right? So I thought I was gonna go to grad school and learn how to solve problems in the real world. Anybody else been to grad school and had that misperception that that's what you were gonna get in grad school? Spoiler alert, you don't learn how to solve problems in grad school. So but what you do is you get additional sets of lenses, right? You get new language to express what you already know somewhere in here in the body to be true, right? So when I got back to the same schoolhouse, I was like, you know that meme that's the dude is like, so I had that experience because this incredible social justice space. I'm talking about a school that sent more Black children to 4-year universities than any other one in the district. More Black and Latinx children, A through G eligible, than almost any school serving poor children across the state, right? That same school, so that's anti-racist, right? That same school sent the highest number of Black students into suspension, expelled the highest number of Black students in the district, right? That's because anti-racism and anti-Blackness are not opposites. Anti-racism and anti-Blackness are cousins. They barbecue and tofu out in the yard with no masks on, okay? And I think we need to understand that anti-racism and anti-Blackness are, they go together, they go together, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And okay, so this, I'm bringing it way back. Old people, y'all remember Bring the Pain? The Chris Rock comedy special, 1996. Micia, I know Micia. Micia, come off mute for a second.
You know I know that.
I know you know that. Okay, young people, you want to watch some of the most misogynistic, violence-filled, internalized, anti-Black comedy genius? Go watch yourself some Chris Rock. Bring the Pain. And I bring it up because, like many works of Black genius, including Black men's genius, it is doused in violence, doused in rape culture. Hey, Pac, how are you doing? Other recently deceased members of our California higher-ups, but I digress there. The point is so everybody heard this phrase, you want a cookie? Oh, you doing something, you want a cookie? See, Matthew, I see Matthew, you got your video on, I see you know what I'm talking about. So that actually comes, as far as I know, from just a citational politics. That comes from a bit that Chris Rock does in 1996 on the Bring the Pain special on HBO, right? In which he kind of has this spiel, which has a lot of class and stuff going on. But his spiel is basically, people want credit for doing things they're supposed to be doing. I raised my kids. You want a cookie? That's what we're doing now? I didn't go to jail. Okay, so that's his kind of bit around, and obviously the gender stuff, this class, there's a lot there we could get into. Come to UC Santa Cruz, Crescent Black Studies, I got you. But part of that is also anti-racist. I'm sorry, you were supposed to be racist in the first place? I'm confused. Why is this a banner? Why is it a flag? Why is there a self-identification with something that literally we hype that police are out of schools? Police wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place. When you put on a seatbelt, I am anti-auto accident. No, you have basic sense and value life. Okay, where are you going in the car? Now you anti-racist, what are we doing? And so people cite Angela Davis again and again. Who knows the citation? Give me in the chat, off the mute, give me the Angela Davis anti-racist citation. I know y'all know it. It's on every IG. You've seen it. In a racist society, it's not enough to not be racist. We must also be anti-racist, right? You heard it, right? Yes? She did say that, almost as an aside, right? People cite Angela Davis, who was a Marxist, communist, prison abolitionist, political prisoner, who was committed to the abolition, not just of prisons, not just of police, but of private property, on the concept that you should be anti-racist. And I'm concerned that the works of living lifelong folks are being twisted in a way that it seems like clearing the way to do the work becomes the work itself. And so I think that it's not all that to say, I guess what I'll close with is just saying that when we engage ourselves in this work, it's important to be clear about where we are at, right? And so if you're thinking about anti-racism as a goal, right, it's important to understand that that is not the work in this moment, right? If that's your goal, that's great. You can go be over here doing your work, right? And for me, when I think about abolition, that's something that is not reconcilable with anti-racism, right? Yes, okay, let's get rid of racism, but abolition means getting rid of the very structures of what Kihana was talking about that capacitate not just educational debt, right, but the whole system of domination and genocide, right? We're talking about a situation in which if you were actually in right relationship with the land, if me here in the town on Chochenyo Ohlone land was engaging not just with Chochenyo Ohlone descendants of the folks who were on this little plot of land, but indigenous people who had the right to migrate all over Turtle Island, right, who now have a say what happens in this land. If the abolition of the entire slave state happens, you're probably not going to have a lawn to put a Black Lives Matter sign on, right? And you might not be there. But let's just be clear that that is the horizon of abolition. And we may not be there in this generation, right? But if we keep ourselves oriented towards that horizon and oriented towards open-handedness to the ways in which the global structures of oppression have allowed us to have breath in this body, then we can start being accountable to the folks who we want to quote on IG. Sorry, y'all got me way off. You got me way off. Going back to Makai's question about segregation. So I'll say two things. One is integration was never the point. It's important. The Brown v. Board of Education was not like, now we're gonna have justice. It was just a strategy. It was a strategy. Using legal system as a strategy. It was like, okay. Thurgood Marshall was like, okay, cool. And like tons of people were like, okay, how are we gonna get these resources? They are stealing from our communities, right? And excising from our communities. Okay, what about DSEG, right? And using these pressure points that at that moment created huge openings and possibility. Years later, Thurgood Marshall was like, yeah, I argued that case. Did it get the result that we wanted? No, right? Because part of what happened, I hear that question for you, Makai, is the decimation of an entire Black middle class. Now, whether the Black middle class is something to be protected and aspired for is a different conversation. But there was Black principals, there was Black teachers, right? There's entire infrastructures of Black teaching that were eliminated overnight. And that night is happening right now as schools start closing down, right? All of a sudden, some people want to have little pandemic pods, but that's not the point. I think what Kihana said about separation is really important, because for me, I would say in this particular moment, there's a lot of like, you see online people like, well, white parents, you don't even send your child to the public school. Like, why do you live in a white neighborhood? Like, why do you send your child to an all-white school? You want them, don't send them over here to my school. So you're inviting people to gentrify now so they can put their Black Lives Matter sign up in the yard that they just got from a foreclosed grandma? That's the invitation? No. And so to me, I think for me, integration means intentional Black-Brown communication. To me, an integrated school is Salvadorian, Mexican, Afro-Latino, Black American, Black Caribbean, Vietnamese, Samoan, Tongan, Fijian, right? All the communities of post-colonized, post-slavery, ongoing genocide, right? Coming together and learning how to work across our melanated spaces, how to get anti-Blackness out of Latinx communities, how to really deeply address xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment in Black communities. That's integration. That doesn't necessitate the presence of white people and white frames of work. So to me, that's the kind of integration that I would love to see more of, so we can really start building across our movements and into spaces where revolution, right, and revolutionary nationalism can really get with abolition and see how we can work together. I don't think that they're completely opposite.
Thank you.
Hold up, real quick. This is me dropping the mic.
Okay. I'm done. So thank you for having me. It's been great. Savannah, come on now. God, I'm like,
I should have written it down. My bad.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Now, what I both loved our prep call because we just got to vibe a little bit, and I'm loving this. And I think this is exactly what we wanted, which is where we're sharing what's important to us. And I mean, I'm just going to keep it flowing because I know we want to get into more questions and conversation, and just share a little bit about my journey. But also, I just need to take a breath. You know what? Because one of the things we do in the Black Teacher Project, we stay breathing. So I'm going to encourage all 400 something of y'all right now. Let's just take a breath together. And digest what we've heard. Because it's so often that we get hyped and we go. And what we know to be true is that breath is life, water is life. So hydrate if you haven't been, right? Or caffeinate, hydrate, caffeinate, whatever you got to do. A little early for life. So, just, but I just want to thank all those that have spoken and say a little bit about my own journey. So I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to Flatbush. I am 47 years old. And I say that as a member of Generation X, which is a very small but mighty generation. We're after baby boomers, before millennials, we that little bit, right? We brought you hip hop on the internet, right? And I say that because I grew up in Brooklyn during a time when busing was really, really prevalent. My mother could afford 1 year of private school. And I think that was all on scholarship. I went to Montessori for kindergarten. And I mentioned that because it was my first foray into formal education where I was just affirmed as a human being, if anyone knows about that method or how Montessori gets down. And so going from there to being bused to predominantly white schools from a Black neighborhood was jarring. And I was bused because I was in that G&T, that gifted and talented, right? My mother knew how to make sure, how to work the system. And so while I got a good look into what success looked like in an equitable system, I have taken years to unlearn what I learned in those spaces. Now I'm grateful because it got me where I am now. I met my best friend in kindergarten. We rolled in elementary together, like grateful for it. And it's important to note that the policies and structures that are designed to so-called help us move forward are often moving us back, stripping us of our humanity while they're building up how we function in these dysfunctional and inequitable systems. So fast forward, a break came for me in high school. I went to Brooklyn Technical High School, which I know has a lot, nowadays we're all over the news because we're one of those schools that you get tested to go into. I will say for those of us who went to tech, I'm gonna say anywhere between the mid 80s and the mid 2000s, we talk about Brooklyn Tech as that being the heyday. When I went there, it was 33% Black, 33% Asian, and 33% a mix of other races and ethnicities. It is there that I learned about Black academic excellence and diversity. So for me, I didn't go to high school having to separate what it meant to be smart from my Blackness. And that made every difference in the rest of my life. And so I knew before then I wanted to be a lawyer because I was watching LA Law and Perry Mason. For those of you with throwback, you know about that. And then I saw corruption in New York. Anybody who grew up under Ed Koch, you already know, right? It didn't take much, it was right there. You could just smell it. But my teachers really did it for me. So I was like, I'm gonna be a teacher. And I knew at 15 that that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach history in particular because there's so much I didn't know. And I knew as much as I loved history, I was like, PBS ain't quite getting it, right? This Eyes on the Prize special, this is not quite it, right? And so I moved forward and I went to a small liberal arts school in Massachusetts, came to California to teach because I got an opportunity. I was like, West Coast, let me see about this West Side life. And I got out here and I got my feelings hurt out here, right? Because I'm like, I'm coming with my East Coast smarts, my swagger. I'm like doing my thing, talking fast. My students are like, hold up, say what now? Who are you? We don't even know you like that. You're not even from here. So slow your roll and sit down and listen. And I learned the importance as a Black educator for me to bring my full self into the classroom. So much so, I think maybe my second year teaching, I came out and I like literally went in a closet and jumped out of the closet because, you know, I'm extra. So I'm coming out there, I like jumped out the closet. Some of my students will remember this because, you know, why not? But I was also teaching when Tupac died. And I didn't understand the significance until my students are like, are we not what lessons did you have today? That's not what we're doing today. And so our lesson became about understanding who he was for them. So I share all of that to say, when I think about teaching in what was the 20th century and now the 21st century, it starts with understanding your own journey and your own self. I thought I would go into teaching and teach history by way of really helping people be critical thinkers, helping students like really push back on the system. But what I learned is I had to clean up my own house in order to actually be a guide for them. Some of you may know when I'm not, even when I am doing my education work, I'm a stand-up comedian, which is why Savannah knew I knew that Chris Rock bit. And so, and if you've been to any of my stand-up shows, they might be classes because I'm gonna teach you something because that's what I know how to do. But when you're teaching, it's not about being that entertainer on stage. My classes may have been engaging, but I learned in the trajectory of my teaching that my job is to guide. My job is to open doors and pathways so that students can jump in and follow their passions and get creative, right? And get critical. So we started with critical theories. I had to teach them about great men's versus people's history and great people's versus great men, like people, right? And deconstruct even how we understand history linearly. So for me, getting into education and thinking about what it means to be a teacher shifted over the years. After a few years, I got burnt out, as many Black teachers do. And I found myself with this cognitive dissonance. So I thought I was teaching for the revolution, but I was put in these leadership positions where I was just reproducing what was going on. So I ran away to grad school. I went to Cal. We representing over here. Go Bears. I went to Cal, studied under Pedro Noguera, and a shout out to my diversity project, Berkeley High, UC Berkeley folks, where we were really trying to unpack racial inequality in schools. And it was at Cal that a few things happened to me. I got with Black engineers. So Cal, so when I got there, my first day on campus was Minority Spring Visit Day, where they got all the students of color who had been accepted to come and like, please come to our school. Over the course of my time there, that became Spring Visit Day, and I believe it's gone now because affirmative action ended during my 5 years at Cal. And that journey helped me understand this system is not for us, right? Not truly. We have to understand how to use these systems. So grad school, I love what Savannah said about like when you think you're going to do in grad school. What I ended up learning, I wanted to be Dr. Mosely so bad. For so many years of my life, I thought if I could just be Dr. Mosely, everything would be great. And then I became Dr. Mosely and I'm like, this it? This what we doing? And I thought that the degree would give me the power to do the work that I really wanted to do. Now, what it has done is allowed me to be in these types of forums. So I'm not saying it wasn't valuable, but it wasn't absolutely what it was about, right? So this idea of hierarchy, I learned the theory so when I'm in different spaces, I can speak in ways that people can understand me. But what I'm grateful for about that education is it kept me grounded. I had to keep talking to people. I stayed in schools. I stayed talking to young people, talking to teachers, because if you don't talk to the people who you claim that you serve, you are reproducing the system. So fast forward a few years, I start working in professional development. I consult, I'm still doing comedy, I'm doing my thing. One day, I'm like getting ready to do some professional development. I'm writing on the board. All of a sudden I hear, hey, Miss Mosely, how you doing? And I'm like, why are people being formal? And if you're gonna be formal, call me Dr. Mosely. Who is this, right? Like, call me Micia. And then I turn around and it's my former student, Belinda Bellinger, who's here and here somewhere listening to this. And Belinda was one of those students that she's who I was teaching for. And when I was teaching her in high school, I was too young and inexperienced to actually give her what she needed. She knew I loved her, so I gave her that part. She knew I loved her and I believed in her, but I wasn't experienced enough to help her be successful in the system. And over time, I realized that wasn't it. I needed to shift this system to be successful for her. And so she was a teacher and thinking about leaving teaching. And I'm like, oh no, I saw the same push out happening to her that happened for me. And so I founded the Black Teacher Project. So the project is very much about me coming full circle in my teaching practice and wanting, Belinda knows this, we're only as successful as she is. I'm like, B, I want you to be the best teacher you can be, because that lets me know that we're doing what we need to do. So case in point, Black Teacher Project, we're doing our thing. Belinda gets pregnant, have a baby. I'm like, boom, we need childcare at all our events, right? Because that responsiveness for me is about paying attention to the people that you care about and you claim to serve. So I want to just share a little bit about the project and then answer Makai's question and open it back up for everybody. But I'll say, like, in the Black Teacher Project, we've gone through a journey. So in the very beginning, we were all about recruiting, developing, sustaining Black teachers, and it was about a numbers game. We wanted to make sure that the number of Black teachers matched the Black population. What we found is that people want Black teachers to manage Black students. We're often seen as overseers. We're positioned in these ways that are just about managing Black bodies. And so having a numbers game, we're not gonna win that numbers game, right? We have a Black man on the Supreme Court. No, thank you, not him. I want the old dude, right? So it's not just about representation. It is about a framework and an understanding. And so in the trajectory of BTP, we've moved from just trying to get the numbers to actually wanting to shift power. So our mission has changed from that recruitment, development, sustaining to being really focused on supporting Black teachers and developing Black teachers to lead and reimagine schools as spaces of liberated learning. Now, everyone's talking about reimagining now that COVID's hit. We've been talking about reimagining because we knew this was not it. We knew this wasn't it. But great, we have this moment now, great, let's all get into the reimagining. But you can't reimagine from a place of harm, because you're reimagining from that hurt place. All you want to do is dull the pain. So first and foremost, you have to know who you are. You have to heal from the trauma you've experienced. You got to know what that is. If you don't know what it is, you can't heal from it, right? Hey, come on now, sorry. So that healing is key to all of it. So when we're talking about shifting power, we're talking about knowing yourself, healing from trauma, and thinking about how we redefine communities, both locally and globally. So yes, we keep Black liberation at the center of things, because we know that when Black people are free, we will be on the path for all folks to be free. And so our opportunity to reimagine comes from the healing of Black folks. So people often talk about now trauma-informed practices. We focus on healing-informed practices, healing-centered practices. So understand the trauma, but focus on the healing. And so to that end, to go back to one of the earlier questions, this idea of segregation and separation, most of our work is around racial affinity-based professional development. That means Black teachers developing and supporting the learning of other Black teachers in racial affinity. Now, we talk about racial affinity, it's not about separation or segregation even, right? It is about what brings us together, which is Black love. And it's hard to love when you're hurt. So we have to heal one another so that we've been taught to not trust each other, to dislike each other, to be suspicious of each other. So we've got to recenter Black love in order for us to actually move through this project. So as we do this, and as we think about Black leadership, we have moved to a place of really helping Black teachers position ourselves as leaders in systems and communities. Because when we think about this reimagining, who's at the table? Right now, everyone's trying to talk about how you go back to school. Where are the Black teachers? We have ideas. Holler at us. So when we recenter Black love and we recenter the wisdom of Black teachers, we're gonna see some shifts. So I'll stop it there.
Real powerful narratives and social analysis young folks who are doing that critical introspection for your work this summer. You can learn a lot. And so we'll be sharing the video. Thank you, Matthew, for your question. We're going until 12. So let's try to get 2 more questions and answer rotations in. We're gonna mix it up a little bit. Can we get Whitney, Garrett, Walker some camera access?
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Thank you, Cam. First, really just want to highlight the fact that this is the first panel. It's all Black folks. Says so much about what this new See Her Center is all about. Dr. Azad, you're the bomb. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cam. My name is Whitney Garrett Walker. Sorry if my lighting's kind of weird. I am longtime educator in OUSD. Started at Roots International Academy in Deep East Oakland. It is no longer, it's no longer there. We could talk for 1,000 years about why that was. Micia, I have really looked to your work for years. I would say, you know, kihana, same. Savannah, you met me when I was a baby teacher. You probably don't even remember who I am, but it's such an honor to just share space with y'all. Like I said, history teacher, 7th grade, OUSD, high school assistant principal, most recently at Skyline High School. I've since transitioned to be a middle school assistant principal at James Lick in San Francisco. I'm super excited to be there. I am also a doctoral student, a doctoral candidate, excuse me. And, and my research centers 2 things. One, I study a concept I developed called ideological lynching and digital lynching to explain what happens when Black people see Black death and what happens to our thought processes when we see it. How does it change us? How does it change the way we think, the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about systems, the way we engage with them? How does this further play into this hegemonic order? All of that. My second piece is about Black women school leaders and not, you know, decentralizing this this need to focus on our negative experiences, but to focus on our Black joy and our healing and why we're in the work. And so my main question is about, you know, Savannah said it perfectly in a talk recently where she said an apocalypse is not literally just the end of every world. It's the end of your world as you know it. And I think we're in need of that. It's so funny how abolitionist teaching and thinking and thought is now all of the craze, especially with Dr. Love spanning that and leading that in the forefront on that. My question is specifically about what does abolitionist school leadership look like? A lot of times we talk about what schools, what teachers need to be doing and how teacher leadership needs to be really strong. You know, Dr. Mosely, I was also that teacher leader who was like, we just need to hold the school. School leaders change every 5 seconds, but we're always here, right? And so it also looks like Black women do that. We do that in every area of society. So what does abolitionist school leadership look like for Black leaders who are awaiting the apocalypse, to use Savannah's metaphor? Big question, I know, but you know, anything counts. It's really necessary. Again, there's different roles in the school. I know abolitionist schools counts, you know, there shouldn't be a hierarchy in who's doing what, and we're not there yet, right? We're not there yet. So what could it look like? Humor me.
Wait, Micia, are we all answering this? Okay, first of all, Whitney, hello, how are you doing? Also, I'm sorry, but there's so many people in the building right now. Shout out to Malaya, shout out to Liz Solis, shout out to Ms. Gill, Heather Clemens, Bree Pickover, Stowe, the amazing Dave Stovall. I'm so glad everybody is in here. But this question, abolitionist school leadership, I'm gonna say that I don't have an answer, so I'm gonna go first so Micia can give you a real answer. I think that, so for me, when I think of, for me, abolition isn't a thing that goes inside of other things. So you can't have abolition inside of a school, can't have it inside of a city structure. Realistically, you can't have it inside the state. So abolition is something that exceeds all of those spaces. So in some ways, abolitionist school leadership means knowing that you will be out of a job, right? Because the pipeline that pays you enough money to buy a house all the way in Antioch is the same pipeline, right, that has pushed your neighbors out of the VGs, which have now been only made accessible to like 20 families who used to live there and some gentrifiers. And so I think it's important that we need to, so a long time ago when I was a kid and I was super hyped and revolution, I was reading the Sada, and I was like, we need to burn it all down. And the OG was like, yeah, but people need to eat. People still need to eat the day before the revolution, right? And so in that sense, showing up and doing your job as a school leader and having a space where Black families, Black mothers, Black parents, Black children can be their full selves and be present and human and sustained for the kind of fight that we saw earlier this spring, sustained and full and ready and organized when those moments come. I think that is the work, but that is more, so to me, that's the work, is making space for organizing in your school and taking risks that may literally put your job at risk, right? So sometimes that may mean, so to me, often what we're paid to do is not our work. It almost never is. So as a school teacher, like I was paid to grade people and give them some content, right? And that's gonna happen, but all the stuff that Micia was talking about, that Black love, that's not on the itemized receipt, right? And so I think really not just expanding spaces so that when you're doing school observation, you're doing classroom observations, not allowing the school to just be a place for teaching and learning, because that's a lie. That's a lie of the white supremacist construct. School is not a place for teaching and learning. School is a place where the state and families are rubbed up against each other. It is a compulsory construct in which people's social services is on the line, people's ability to keep their children in custody is on the line. Their children are only there because they don't want to go back to juvie, right? So I think really understanding that school is a site for potential organizing, and really seeing the children who are not participating in teaching and learning, not as failures, but as possibilities for organizing, right? And as leaders and teachers around what is needed in this space. So anytime you can have that school building be more than teaching and learning, whether it's English classes for folks who want to learn it, whether it's, immigration, legal clinics, whether it's like expungement, getting that stuff off your records, SSI training, right? Food and delivery, food services, I worked at a school where they had like couples counseling for couples in, for teenagers who were in abusive relationships in school. They're like, okay, y'all obviously not gonna break up with him. Let me at least get you to a place where you can be a person. So I think it's willing to see a school as not a school, right? And knowing that you are a state agent, right? And so think of yourself as a police. And I mean that in the sense of what do we really want police to do, right? And we saw those young people saying, leave this job, right? Before that, ideally, they would be documenting the stuff that we see happening. They would be taking resources away from the office, right? They would be disarming. They might be taking bullets out of people's guns. Like what do we imagine? Like if you understand yourself to be the state, how can you disarm that space, right? And make it less lethal while still knowing that as soon as that you clock out, you better be at that BOP meeting, right? Wait, BOP needs free space to meet, they can meet here. Oh wait, there needs to be some, there's an ICE raid happening. Cool, ICE isn't allowed on our school building. Text everybody, bring everybody with their vulnerable folks, come be in the auditorium. We got food, y'all can be here overnight because ICE can't come in the building. Whatever it is, making that school building, I think, accessible for things beyond teaching and learning.
Ditto. So now, I'm gonna call these proud plugs. I'm gonna proudly plug a panel we have at the Black Teacher Project coming up in a couple of weeks with Erica Huggins and some folks talking about the history of Oakland Community School and what lessons we can learn from Oakland Community School about liberated learning now. Because when the Panthers created that school, it was created with a core of love. It was created as a space that was multi-use, exactly what Savannah's saying. And the relationship between the content of what the students learned, what the parents wanted them to learn, and what was needed by the community converged in that space. So for us, when we talk about schools as sites of liberated learning, it's very much about repurposing the site. So I'm the person, you know, I struggle with abolitionism, like with a lot of the idea of like getting rid of schools. I'll say that. Because in my generation, in my lifetime, I don't think we're going to get rid of schools. I would love for us to create something new. So when I think about my work, I'm like, how can we get closer? Like when Savannah was talking about that, like having the orientation, put yourself in the direction. So for me, getting rid of these notions, what I tell people, most of us who are my generation, we were trained last millennium. We were trained in the 20th century. And people who are coming up now, like, y'all remember the rotary phone? Y'all remember, my students paged me. My pager would go off in the middle of class. I had pagers in my desk, right? And so this idea of creating 21st century learning necessitates that we get rid of the notion that teachers are the information experts. Students can look up anything they need to learn faster than you can try to remember it. So our goal, our purpose, I believe our purpose was never about just shifting information from our brains to our students. But now we know our purpose is absolutely to open up those pathways. So the last thing I'll say on this is really, I think our role is as gatekeepers. When we use a power analysis and think about how class works, how race, how we understand race, when we get these degrees, when we get these positions in schools, how are we opening up the gates to access for folks? So everything Savannah said, and I'm going to say this, I said this on the last panel I was on, any student right now, if you are a high school student, if you are a college student who is going to have online learning this year, we've got a lot of folks who are just lamenting, right? People who are starting college who are so sad. You are a gatekeeper. Everyone in your household should have a free year of college education. You put your computer on speaker, you make sure your grandma, your auntie, your cousin, everybody is taking the classes that you're taking. And so this is how we use our positionality. So schools right now are changing. Some of us aren't going to be in physical buildings, but this idea allows us to open it up. And it's not about what I know, it becomes about what we know. So the work that the Oakland Community School did, the work that the Panthers did around education is a beautiful pathway and platform for us to know. Shout out to my homegirl, Jill Christina Vest. She's got a Kickstarter going. They're going to have a mural honoring the women of the Black Panther Party. We have so much to learn from our past. That's the history teacher in me. I'm going to stop because then I'm going to be all in 1960 something. So we haven't heard from you in like 100 years.
Go ahead, take us there. We need it. Take us there. Take us there.
I'll just, a lot has already been said, but one thing I want to say, a couple things. One is, especially in bringing up the Panthers, I think something that's so important to remember, and particularly as someone, my kid's grandfather was a Panther and spent almost 50 years in prison, right? Just recently was released as a group of former political prisoners who are being finally released from prison, is that these struggles are the same struggles that folks have been engaging in and with for centuries, right? And so I think it's important to remember that and historicize that Black Lives Matter, like what folks are trying to do in Black Lives Matter is the same fight that Herman Bell was locked up for almost 50 years for, right? It's the same fight. And I think it's important to remember that these are not new struggles so that we can draw on to the foundations that folks have already laid and build on those. And I think even the changes that we're seeing right now, and this is connecting to the other thing that I want to say, those changes are because folks had been doing that work, right? It's not just because everybody went to the streets and they erupted in sorrow and rage and folks are like, this is where we're at right now. It's because people had laid that groundwork, right? And that's why we're seeing these changes that are happening right now. And I think it's important to remember that and honor that, and honor those folks who have done that work. And so the other thing I'll say too is just as we think about like what's possible now or not, that's why I talk about this meantime in between time, because I think it's so important to remember that shit we do right now matters, right? Like changing a law so that Black women don't have to be shackled during childbirth. And I gave birth to 3 babies, no medicine. I'm gonna tell you that is, you know, nothing to sneeze about, or however they say it, I'm tired. But it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And it doesn't abolish prisons, but it does, you know, it does change something. It does make a meaningful difference. And so I think it's important to think about, you know, all of these things that we get worried, and even in thinking about anti-Blackness, and it makes us feel like there's nothing we can do because everything's just all messed up. And so what does that mean? It's like, there are things we can do to make meaningful changes in the lives of folks, right? Like my mom works with folks to plan for parole, right? She spends a year on the phone working diligently with folks to be like, this is what they want you to say. This is what you have to say so that you can get parole. And all these folks walking out the door, like that work means something to them. Again, it doesn't abolish prisons, but it does mean something meaningful. And so I think it's important to remember that there are things that we can do. And if we love our folks and we want to see our folks, you know, in the best possible places that we can be, we have to remember that and work in those spaces where we can to do the things that we need to do. And lastly, I'll just say, because Cam is texting me like, can you say something about anti-Blackness and white supremacy? And I know Savannah will probably chime in on this. One thing I think is important, and this echoes some of what Savannah was saying and what she was doing in schools, you know, is that I was in a school that was like 99.9% Black and brown. I mean, there was one white boy who everybody called white boy, right? So the school is all Black and brown. But there was not this, as folks think, like, you know, happy dory solidarity, like, oh, we're all Black and brown folks together here, like working towards the revolution. It was not like that. And the students, the Black students in particular that I was working with, were very aware that they were positioned differently within the school than other folks. And so it's important to think about, like, how do we tease out and say, yes, this thing, white supremacy, does exist. And yes, that is something that we're all trying to navigate and resist, but also that there's this other thing, and that it means something to think along the lines of Black, right, and non-Black versus white and non-white, right? And that shifting that center is important for thinking through, you know, how we move forward and how these ideas become important for whatever we call revolution or abolition, in order to get where we need to get. But I just want to say that, like, you know, especially right now when folks are saying like, you know, what can we do, or how do we work together to make XYZ happen? You know, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. That's not the work that I do. There are folks out there who probably do that work. That's not me. I'm like trying to figure out what we do as Black folks, and all our different, like, what do I do as a Black professor versus what do you do as a, you know, as an activist versus teacher versus mama, and some of us holding all of those spaces together. So I'm not going to do that work, but I do think it's important to remember and recognize that that presumed solidarity is a presumption, and that that has to be interrogated, right, in order to really meaningfully move forward in the way that folks, I think, really want to.
Thank you. Thank you all for all of that wisdom and brilliance. We have, you know, a few minutes left, and thank you, Whitney, for asking your question, for your research, ideological digital lynching, and ways in which we can be counter-hegemonic. So you know, the movement can grow, our lives could live. Anyway, so thank you, Whitney. And shout out to Michelle Cody, longtime proud member of the Black Teacher Project. Unfortunately, I know that we wanted to get you in to ask a question, but given the time, we're gonna end with Samaje, and I don't think Kylan, we don't see you on here, so we're gonna end with Samaje. And Samaje, could you, oh, you're here, you were Pamphila Ross, Kylan. Okay, the whole time I was wondering who has my mother's name. somehow, some way, you're registered as my mother in my mother's name. But anyway, let's get
Pay attention. Lessons.
I don't know what happened. Samaje and Kylan in the name of my mother. Oh, Khalid, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so let's get Samaje and Kylan, who I think is Pamphila Raz, on my side at least. But anyway, and then you know, we have about 10 minutes to close out, y'all. So
good morning, panelists. My name is Samaje Chapel, and I go to Hamilton High School in the west side of Los Angeles, but I reside in South Central Los Angeles. And I just really wanted to say that this is really dope, being able to connect with such like-minded role models, especially being a young Black scholar. It is hard for teachers to take me serious and for them to acknowledge and reform their anti-Blackness. Even the Black teachers treat us as if we're inferior to students of other races. It creates a sense of distrust in the classroom because we are constantly having to prove ourselves to them, which we shouldn't. No matter how much you try to change your appearance, you will be categorized based on your Blackness. There always seems to be some kind of excuse when it comes to Black excellence. Whether it's being accused of cheating or plagiarizing or simply fact-checking teachers, we're always labeled as aggressive or hostile because the knowledge around the language to describe our Black issues are locked away in institutions that don't want us to have access to it. Seeing Black educators like yourselves really made me realize that we need more educators that know how to teach and connect with students of color. In order to educate others, we as scholars must educate ourselves. We are the generation that the world has been waiting for. It is us against the world.
thank you so much, Samaje. Kylan, I don't think we got you in here, so I'm going to ask you a question. It's basically this. So we got like 7 minutes, so 2 minutes each, so we could thank folks. But basically, with the 2 minutes you have to end, what are some final words you have for folks so that we can humanize education in the fight for Black lives more effectively, more critically, and more holistically? Two minutes.
I'm gonna go. So and I'm on the clock. 2 minutes. And this is just me off the dome. First is that knowledge of self. If we're talking about humanizing, we have to reconnect with our humanity. Some of us are closer to or further away from our humanity. One thing I'm gonna say is go hug a tree. I'm that chick. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm about that city life, and I'm gonna need you to hug a tree. Because when we connect to nature in some form, whether it's drinking water, what have you, it helps us understand that as human beings, we are an extension of the earth. And so even this, as much as I created the Black Teacher Project, we love Blackness, and how we have constructed and reconstructed that identity has everything to do with us trying to connect with our humanity. So being able to bring those things together are important. As we look at coalition building, right? Knowing who you are is an important part of that. So I really appreciate, I don't appreciate what your teachers are doing to you and what they're saying to you, but I appreciate you speaking truth, because not all, Black teachers need that healing. So many of us have found success in this inequitable system, and the success in the system has hurt our brains. And it has helped us get away from our humanity. So we are bringing the harm that we experienced to you. And so I want to apologize on behalf of Black teachers who do that, because we're hurt and we haven't healed. So now we're trying to pass that hurt on to you and say, do what I did and you'll be successful like me. Meanwhile, I'm crying at night because I know I'm not right. So as we get clear on who we are and connect to our humanity, that will allow us to recenter our work and know what is ours to do.
All right, Cam, you're gonna have to call time on me because y'all got a lot going on right now. First of all, Samaje, that was a word. That was a word, and you should have gone last because that's what we needed to have said. I'm gonna speak directly to you, and I'm gonna tell you something that Zora Neale Hurston wrote down, but we've known for a long time. All skin folk are not your kinfolk, okay? And so a lot of times people are like, oh, why do people think of Black children as hostile and threatening, and they misperceive this whole idea, Black children, in particular, Black girls and people who are perceived as Black girls are seen as threatening, I'm gonna tell you something that's unpopular. You are a threat. You are threatening, because you showing up the way you are, as sharp and fierce as you are, is a threat to everything that some people stand for. Is a threat to everything that they've had to lie to themselves and internalize in order to keep that job and keep it together. And they have to push you down just to stay above water. Okay? And so you don't have to make yourself small. You don't have to make yourself non-threatening. You don't have to disarm yourself. You don't have to put down those weapons that you have sharpened with your knowledge of self. Right? And so I want you to say that that's not always wrong when they say you're a threat, right? You just need to be clear that you're not a threat to them, right? They can step in and fight alongside you. They are choosing not to do that work, and that's not on you, okay? And so, but Cam, to your question about humanizing, I just want to say that, a lot of us are on the concept of the human, right? Because everything we know about being human comes out of European dominance. The concept of the human is an Enlightenment concept that's doused in cisgenderism, that's modeled on a white, cisgender, heterosexual male who owns property, right? And many of us come from communities where the human don't even make sense, because we're never disconnected from the land. We're never disconnected from ancestors. We're never disconnected from each other, right? And so I just want to affirm that in our practice of humanizing, that we also bust open the inherited idea of the human and recreate something that is some of us will never be, I can't go back across the Atlantic, okay? I can't go find a Dogon, nature of self. What I can do is be right here on this land with y'all and create something that honors that past and makes something that is possible now, that busts open anything that we've inherited as human. And that, I think, is what that Black love, that earth, that hugging of the tree, hugging that tree is the first place. That's what Micia said. These redwoods been here long before us, and they witnessed us, right? Can we witness them? Can we honor the hundreds of years that they've been standing tall with our own strength and dignity in the face of those racist teachers?
Thank you. Definitely. When we're talking about humanizing and humanization, we definitely talk about more expansive and robust notions of humanity that for us disrupts the Eurocentric, systemically imposed self-hate, divide and conquer, and sub-oppression. Kihana?
I'll be quick because I know we're closing out, but I think first, Samaje, that was everything. So thank you for that. I think what I want to just say is like two things. One is that it's important to recognize, Baldwin said in his Talk to Teachers, like, if I could talk to Black children, what I would say is like, recognize that this whole thing is a criminal conspiracy to destroy you, right? And I think it's so important to remember that, right? Not in a way that makes it so that, oh, I can't do anything now because blah, 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 but to just know that and understand it and have that with you as you walk through the world. And the second thing I'll say is just like, be kind to yourself, right? A part of why I wrote that piece was like, I want folks to understand that this is deeper than racism. That's why you feel the way you feel. That's why you're upset. That's why you don't know what to do with it. I'm a grown ass woman, professor, and I still can't get out of bed sometimes, right? Because it's hard, and it's hard to exist in a world where your existence is a problem. And so I just want to say that, like, be kind to yourself and recognize that is the world you're living in. Right? And understand that every moment that you're moving through it. That's it.
Man, wow. Thank you all for an incredible morning. Can we just real quick affirm the panel, lift up some overall learnings, and just hit up the chat with your appreciations and maybe your takeaways from the day? Hit the chat. Panelists, Samaje, thank you for your words, your questions, some appreciations, and maybe your takeaway real quick in the chat so the panelists can see.
And if young people are still on the mic, if Samaje or any of y'all want to speak on it out loud while folks are typing, that'd be dope too.
Yeah, so let's keep the young folks on for as long as you want to be here, and maybe you can offer us some final words too. And as people are chatting their appreciations and their learnings, I just want to thank the ASL interpreters, Lisa and Sean, for holding us up, holding us down with the American Sign Language interpretations. Appreciation also for everyone participating in the chat. You know, look out for future See Her events. We have Lessons from the Field, July 31st. We have Ruha Benjamin, who will prepare us to reimagine remote teaching for the upcoming year on August 14th. So thank you again for the wonderful panelists. We got four young folks. I don't know if you wanted to say something to the panelists on our way out, but we got Matthew, Sarah, and Fayola, maybe even Samaje.
I just wanted to say how extremely grateful I am to you giving this opportunity to be able to talk directly to you all. And just like I said before, just being in the, just being in my space, especially like in schools, it's just really hard because my school experiences were not all good, especially when I did go to a predominantly white institution in the suburbs of Southern California. It was very hard for me to obtain the resources that I needed because those resources were not as easily accessible to me. And so just hearing these words of affirmation and confirmation that I am doing the right thing, that I should no longer be afraid to express my Blackness, it just really resonated with me because it's just really what I needed to hear this morning.
Adding on to what Samaje said, like I completely agree. Like I just really wanted to thank you guys and just like say that you really affirmed my power as a Black student and especially as a Black female. And you just giving me so much advice and like I've just taken away so much. So I really want to say thank you for your wisdom, for your advice. Just like your stories were really amazing. And yeah, I just want to say thank you.
I also want to say thank you for the actual opportunity to speak to y'all directly because I've never had this opportunity to speak to people Black women, especially in this position of power. Y'all are so educated and it's beautiful, and you guys talked about your different identities, and it really just inspired me to really work to mend all my identities together, not to separate them, because me more together is more powerful. And accepting myself and y'all affirming all of us it was beautiful. I'm holding back tears because it was amazing to talk to all three of y'all. Y'all were fantastic, and thank you again for fighting for us and fighting for our generation so we can continue to push on your fight and our struggles of our ancestors and y'all and all of us. So thank you, much love.
Yeah, I want to agree with what Matthew was saying. To see Black women, to read y'all articles first off, and for y'all being Black women, it really shows that power that Black women always had, and hearing y'all talk about it really encourages me to keep going as Black women to a Black man, as we know Black women always been there for Black men, regardless of the situation, so hearing what y'all had to say and, speaking knowledge, educating me more on what I didn't know really has a big influence on how I should see things. But yeah, overall it was good. And thank you to the ASL translators.
And our other classmate, Kylan, you guys can't see him, but he said that to tell you guys that thank you and that your words have motivated him a lot and that he's glad that he had the opportunity to read your material.
And
anything you want to say?
I want to read.
Oh, there you go. Come on, Sarah.
Okay. Sorry, I want to reiterate everybody who just spoke. And I just want to say that you guys are a reflection of who I am, not just because you guys are Black, not just because you guys are women, but just because you guys exist. And that is extremely important to me because the systems that be it school, be it America, have told me that I do not matter. And you guys are a complete reduction of that. And your writings have put what I've been through facing suspension, through anti-Blackness, you put that into words and you acknowledged that I am here and that I exist and that I can function in the society, in the society as a person and human, and being able to put that into words is just, it's amazing. I won't call it a superpower. I won't call it strong. I call it real. And that is something that is ingrained in Black women and that we continuously do all the time with upholding the community. And I just seen it continuously through the writings that you guys had, and I've seen it with activism, how Black women are consistently at the front line. And you guys are doing that through teaching. You guys are doing that through your writing, and it's just extremely inspiring, and I commend you guys for being here and being panelists and showing us what Blackness, what true Black excellence can be.
Any quick response from the panelists?
I would just say y'all are amazing. We are so ready. We're so ready to follow you in your leadership, ready to follow your peers. And so I just appreciate your vision and your leadership in this space. I think a lot of the things I saw in the chat was like, how do we plug in? What do we do? I feel like Samaje, Sarah, Makai, Fayola, y'all are ready to do what needs to be done. But I'm just gonna drop, for instance, there's a all across the US, there's a really big push happening around defunding the police, right? But a lot of us don't know what that is. And so Sunrise Movement, Movement for Black Lives, a bunch of folks have gotten together to put on these 4-day defund the police crash courses. Like, wait, what is this? How do I do it? How do I get together with my folks? So I'm gonna drop a link. There's the first session's happening now, but they're gonna keep doing these. So you can get on the interest list if you want, just to start connecting to other folks in your area, wherever you are, who are working on this, and to learn how to read a city budget, read a police budget, and start thinking about, okay, how do I do that work wherever I am? Because some of us have extra time this summer, we can start contributing to that. So I'm gonna drop it in now.
Thank you.
And I want to offer gratitude around just for y'all participating, for coming, for paying attention to what matters to you and sharing it with us. Again, my purposeful and positive plugs, I don't call them shameless because there's no shame in my game. I hope that some of you consider becoming teachers, because when we think about, the Black Teacher Project is not just about shifting the mindset of current teachers. The way y'all are coming up, imagine if who you are, and imagine if your teachers were who you are now, what they would be teaching you, how they would be treating you, right? And so we will continue to learn from those who have come before. And so I'm always, anytime I get a chance to talk to beautiful Black youth, I'm gonna just encourage you and know that we need, just let you know we need you. And so whether that's a formal, you become a teacher in a school, which of course I would love, and if that's not your path, please ensure that you are sharing your wisdom in whatever way that you can. And you don't have to be 18 to do that. Right now, there's some younger cousin, sister, brother, somebody who you can be talking to. And so as you are teaching up to us, because you taught us a lot today, just want to encourage you to continue to share your wisdom, and just thank you so, so very much. And if you have those Black teachers, like those Black teachers, come, tell them to holler at me. Make sure you get my information. I got something for them. So there's still too many people on for me to say all the stuff, but come tell them to see me. We're gonna get them right.
I know we gotta go, so I'm gonna just be quick, but I just wanna say y'all definitely got me in my feelings. And so thank you for, sharing space with y'all. And if you see me go back to working with high school folks and leave Northwestern, this is why.
All right, I wanna thank kihana, Savannah, Micia once again, the young folks bringing the light, bringing the love. Lisa and Sean, thank you so much. I had a wonderful day. I'm gonna go be in my feelings real quick. And, unfortunately, our time is up. I love all of you. This is a wrap, and we're out.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much.
So much.
Amazing.
Video will be put out soon to share with folks who weren't able to be here. And also we got about 40 young folks outside of them who didn't get to be on camera that are also here learning from you, who have read your work and are inspired by the Black Teacher Project. Thank you all.